We're delighted to have you here. We'd love you just to sit back, relax, bring your cuppa, and listen to the conversations that we have amongst ourselves and with our invited guests.
Hi everyone! Today we are talking with the fabulous Danielle Grandinetti. So Danielle, the first question we have to ask everyone who comes on to Conversations and Cuppas is, what is your favourite drink? And let us see your mug.
I have my Sherlock Holmes mug because historical mystery, yes, definitely. My favorite detective. And my favorite is actually chai. I love a chai latte. And I know you're not supposed to leave the tea bag in, but chai is one of the few that I can oversteep because the deeper and stronger the flavors, the better. So it was perfect for today.
Chai is my daughter's favourite tea as well. She has a chai tea mix in our line of tea caddies.
I actually worked on a blend of my own that when I don't want the caffeine, I can just let simmer on the stove, and it's the flavors without the black tea part. So it's more like an infusion, but it has all the spices. So it's perfect for
That's nice.
Late afternoon on a good fall day. And it has all the yummy part without the caffeine.
Well, that's very nice.
What are you drinking today, Anna?
Very good. I'm drinking writer's mugs. Here we go. I'm drinking, because I'm a writer, so I've got a writer's mug. But I'm just drinking normal builder's tea, same like last time, because it's the time of day when that's what I drink. It's just plain normal tea. And then maybe later I might have my smoky tea, that's usually my evening tea, or maybe an Earl Grey tea, or maybe a ginger tea later. So I always have something a bit different in the evening. But this time of day, bog standard tea. That's me.
Yeah. I've got my branded mug and I've got my Scottish breakfast tea. This is mine. I get it from a company in Edinburgh. That's lovely.
That sounds
great.
Wonderful. I have Earl Grey every morning for like the first thing in the morning to wake me up. And then,
do you?
Yeah, so that's my morning tea, which my husband has gotten really good at making because he puts the kettle on for me.
Perfect.
I know, right? And then Irish breakfast is, I like the stronger teas, I think. Like those really good, like robust flavors.
Yeah, strong teas.
So Danielle, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you? And just give us a background on who is Danielle.
So I love that we are doing this recording from 3 different continents. I am over in the North American continent. Ooh, still morning over here was at this recording. Pardon me as my brain wakes up. I'm in Wisconsin, which is on the northern side. I can see Lake Michigan out my window, which for those of you who don't know what a Great Lake is basically like, say, the North Sea. Like, it's basically a sea, but it's freshwater. Like, we can't see land on the other side. It has its own microclimate that it creates right here by the shore. It's wonderful. And we get lake effect snow and fog and all sorts of fun stuff. So Lake Michigan is actually one of my big inspirations. So I'm going to talk more about it later. So I wanted to give you a little geography of it.
Yeah.
I am originally from the Chicago area. My Italian grandma, I'm half Italian and probably closest to my Italian heritage because my grandma lived with us for several years and I grew up on her stories, which again, I'll talk more about later.
Did she speak Italian to you, Danielle?
No, because that's part of the immigration story for a lot of immigrants that came over then. They really wanted their children to assimilate. So they would speak in Italian to each other, but they wouldn't teach it. So I picked up on the cadence of it. So when I include Italian in my stories, I can hear the rhythm of it. And I studied Italian because I wanted to learn it.
Yes.
And it was really easy for me to pick up because I already knew how to say it. So, but I grew up on a lot of her stories. And then the other side of me is Swedish and Dutch. So that's my farming family side of family. And again, most of my great-grandparents all immigrated from these varying countries. So immigrants and immigration is very close to my heart, and it shows up in my books a lot.
Oh,
That's me.
And you are married with children?
Yes, I am. I am married about a little over 10 years now to a local, actually. We met through our parents. And I don't usually recommend getting set up by your parents or the small local church that they both attend, except it worked. So I don't know what to tell you. We have a Hallmark story. What can I say?
Yeah.
So now we have 2 little boys. They are in grade schoolers. I just dropped them off at school for the day. So it's quiet here, very quiet. And then we have a Labrador who, if you join my newsletter, she has her own little segment in my newsletter every week.
That's cute.
Her name is Penny, and she's very popular. In fact, I think she's more popular than me, but she might make an appearance. We'll see.
A friend who had she had a cockatiel that she would also include in her newsletter. And it was so funny because people would always comment on the cockatiel and all the other stuff, like, I've written this book and I've done that and I've spoken at this event, and nobody was in the least bit interested. They just wanted to know what this cockatiel had been busy doing. It was so funny.
So Penny does my giveaway every week. So she's the one who gives away books, and I love and asks the question every week. So I love when my readers actually reply to her, not me, or they'll reply to both of us. It's just fantastic. I love it. And
yeah,
she doesn't know she loves it as much as she does, but she does love it. She's a people dog.
As all labs are.
Yes.
True. Very true.
I just realised I need to sign up to your newsletter, Danielle. I thought I had. But yeah, I need some doggy love in my life, so I'm signing up.
So in case you want to know, as the plug is right now, it's DanielleGrandinetti.com and then /fireside news. It's all one word. So, because I love the idea of a fireside, like that hearth, cozy home. And that's what I want my newsletter to be, that I send it out every Monday morning, bright and early. So hopefully it lands early in your day, in your inbox. It's just that little set your week off right kind of note.
Yeah, that's really good.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm so excited to talk about your books. I love your books.
Aw, thanks.
And I've still got so many to read, but every one I read, I'm like, this is so good. I need to read the rest. Well, you've already kind of touched a little bit, but what inspires you with your writing?
So historically, one of the reasons I picked the time period I write in, almost all my books are 1930s. Is because of growing up with my grandma. She was born and raised in 1920s, 30s Chicago. And if you know your history, that is Al Capone, Chicago. And being Italian, my great-grandparents are buried in the same cemetery as Al Capone.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And my grandparents would be, except the cemetery got full, so, it was across the street.
Yeah.
Yes. So my grandma would tell stories about growing up in that version of Chicago. And the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is a big mob historic event. She would tell stories of hearing the sirens from that event. Probably have relatives who were involved but you just don't talk about that, so you just hear the rumors. Yeah. So those stories, I think, were ingrained in me from an early age. So when I discovered a historical event while writing one of my first books about the dairy strikes that happened in Wisconsin in the 1930s, all of a sudden everything just clicked together. And it's like the Lord was putting together this history before I knew I even needed it. And I've fallen in love with the decade. So between that history, again, farming family history, and then loving Lake Michigan and weather, and I set a lot of my stories close to the lake and in this general Midwest area with Chicago and Wisconsin. I don't know. I just love incorporating all of that, and it definitely inspires my stories out of that.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, how the best stories actually they really do come from not necessarily our own experience. It's not like we're kind of regurgitating what's happened to us, but just from the things that have impacted us and the people who've impacted us. And as you say, the stories that have impacted us. It's quite interesting to kind of look through, like if I look through kind of my books, it's like, okay, what's been the influence and what's been the stories that are kind of shaped the stories that I write. It's quite interesting to kind of see where that goes and kind of figure out, okay, these have been bigger influences than I've even thought that they were, And
I think it took me a couple books before I really pieced that together, even. Like, it was so deep, ingrained, that it wasn't a cognitive action that I did, but now that I'm seeing that pattern, I'm actually leaning into it more, and hopefully that makes my stories even deeper that way. Yeah.
What was your first book, Danielle?
My first book was funny. My first book was contracted by a small traditional press, and it's A Strike to the Heart. But out of that, I wanted to write a prequel. So my first book is actually To Stand in the Breach, which is the prequel to that book. But that's the book I was referencing. It's about the dairy strikes. And I originally wrote it as a contemporary romantic suspense, and it was rejected. And I actually submitted it as a love-inspired suspense book. And it was rejected because something was missing. And I went back to the drawing board with it in 2020. My dad worked for a local dairy company at the time, and he was mentioning during everything going on with COVID that the dairy farmers were having to dump their milk because the supply chain was all messed up. And I'm like, these things tend to repeat themselves. Has this ever happened before? Yes, it has.
Lo
in
and behold.
1933. It was a big deal. You know, you hear about like strikes and you think like steel and like labor unions and, well, farmers. They organized to create a statewide strike to raise dairy prices because at the time, dumping their milk, because they had to milk the cows. The cows had to be milked. Like that was not for the health of the cows, but the cost it took to deliver the milk to the creameries, they were not getting paid enough. So it actually made more sense just to dump the milk. And they made a big show out of dumping it in like the road. They would stop trucks, you know, turn violent. People died because of the confrontations. Like state officials sent out the National Guard with bayonets. I mean, it was a big deal. And I'm like, what if is my favorite question to ask. And I'm like, 1933, my contemporary romantic suspense. And I put them together and I had a book.
Great.
And it launched everything.
Wow.
It's the story inside of you, so it makes the story authentic.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that what you were trying to do was like, you know, the idea of right to market and do what it is that the market's asking you to do. And I think it's really tempting to do that and to look at, you know, what is the Christian fiction market asking us to write? And then to look at that and then try and fit it, but it's like, oh no, you end up feeling like a square peg in a round hole, and you actually can't communicate anything because it isn't that heart thing that has been deposited over years and years that is what you're writing out of. It's writing out of this kind of, I don't know, commercial constraint, which even, you know, I'm kind of telling that to myself to convince myself that it's okay to write niche. And
yes, it is.
Thank you.
Well, so looking back at my reading history, my favorite stories growing up were these mystery novels, children's mystery novels. I highly recommend them. I loved them. They're older, so it might be hard to find, but they're called The Adventures in the North Woods. They were originally published by Bethany House, and the author was Lois Winifred Johnson, I think, if I'm remembering right.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 10-book series about this Irish immigrant girl whose widowed mother married into a Wisconsin farm family who were very Swedish. You see a pattern.
Yes, see a pattern. See the connections.
And she would get into trouble and she would solve these mysteries, and her older stepbrother was, you know, the annoying brother, and then his best friend liked her, so, you know, he'd play protective friend, and so there was, anyway, for, you know, grade school, middle school girl, that was my favorite series.
Sure.
And you can't find a lot of that. As I grew older, looking for like the adult version of this, I found authors like Rhys Bowen and Victoria Thompson who write cozy mysteries set in the early 1900s. And I'm like, I love these books. I need more. And I think without realizing there was a need even in my own life for what I love to read, I ended up writing that. Everyone thinks of cozy mysteries or romantic suspense as contemporary. And I love the idea of putting the expectations of those genres in a historical time period.
Yeah.
An article I read on Substack recently that I absolutely adored was that historical fiction shouldn't be a genre any more than contemporary fiction should be a genre. Those should be umbrella terms, and the genres underneath them should be the same.
Yeah. The
only difference is the time period and certain expectations that come with historical versus contemporary, but historical fiction shouldn't be such a catch-all. It needs to have the same tropes and genres and expectations as contemporary, just set historical.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It's too wide, isn't it? To be able to just say, write historical fiction. It's like, well, do you write war fiction, or do you write, as you say, romantic fiction? Or, I mean, like I started reading the Inspector Lavender mysteries. I don't know if you've read any of those that
I
are
haven't,
set
but those
in
sound good.
Victorian London. They are
Yeah.
so great. And it's the same thing, that it's like it's a contemporary author. So it's not like, you know, you with Sherlock, that's a older author writing in his own time. So in effect, he was writing contemporary fiction. But this is a modern author who's writing as though it's a Victorian, novel. It's about the Bow Street Runners and based on a real character who actually became chief constable or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so interesting, as you say, that it's kind of that we don't almost allow ourselves the permission to say, well, what I actually write is, I write romantic suspense, but it's set in the past, rather than I write historical fiction and it happens to be romantic suspense. It's like, it's interesting.
Exactly. It's difficult. It's made marketing difficult because I don't quite know how to classify my books. But I actually had a reader recently leave a review that is one of my favorite reviews that I've ever gotten. She nailed it perfectly. She's like, Danielle writes, they're not quite cozy mysteries, like they're I don't want to say grittier because that has different connotations, but edgier than a cozy mystery, but not so thrilling of romantic suspense that you're like, you can't relax and read them. She's like, they're the perfect cozy up with a blanket read. And I'm like, okay, you nailed my books. Thank you for explaining it to me. Thank you for summarizing the essence of my books in one. But notice she didn't mention the historical. She mentioned like it was the feeling and the blend of that mystery suspense angle that kind of sits in between. And writing historical lets me kind of like get that in between sense. But otherwise, like I don't write historical romance. I write this mystery suspense, cozy romantic suspense. Is that something?
You can make it a something.
I'm going to make it a something. And set it in the 1930s. And that's...
Caroline, with your books, obviously you generally write contemporary fiction. Could you imagine picking up your kind of ideas and your stories and popping them into, maybe Glasgow, or, I mean, would it be radically different, or do you think you could pick it up and move it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's funny because recently I've just been thinking about one of my grands and some of the stories that my mum's told me about her, and it's kind of like, wow. I mean, in some ways she was very traditional and very of her time, but there was a few decisions she made and part of like what she experienced in life that are really, an edge for those days. So sometimes I think, I'm listening to Danielle talking about, the influence of your grandparents and how that impacts your writing. And I have kind of thought, I wonder if there's something maybe there is not. I love Danielle's books, but it's not my time period. But I kind of think, you don't know, like
you don't.
You could...
I know. Yeah, that's right. And it's not even you're not telling your grandparents' story. It's not that, but it's kind of being inspired by the stories and by the events that took place. I mean, for me, it's always a location thing. So it's always, I go to a location and there's just a sense of history's happened in this place. And so that's kind of, and then I want to dig around and find out, well, what history happened in this place and who were the people and what would it have felt like and so on and so on. So I think for me, it's a very location-based sort of a process. But I think, as you say, it's like it still has to be based on somebody else's story, but then that sparks your imagination and it sparks curiosity. And then, and I think that for the modern reader, it gives something quite unique, because it's like, well, what have you found interesting about that story, or what have you found interesting about that location? And then the story that comes out of that then is very much ends up being a personal, this is something I've created, rather than just telling Granny's stories, which might not be so
it's like,
interesting.
what's the hook? Yeah, but that's cool. But I love that richness you're bringing to those stories with all it's all that background and all those different backgrounds that have came together into your family, and just how that enriches your stories. Because definitely reading your books, you just have that real sense of, yeah, this is somebody who knows what they're talking about with their writing, and they're just teaching me something about maybe a culture I don't know so much about, or a period of time I don't know so much about. And that for me is the best way to learn history, through good fiction writing. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we can't wait to chat with you again soon. So get your cuppas ready and come and join us.